Just like yesterday, we are going to start by reciting Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Today is the second lecture of Introducing Buddhism series of the Buddhist Society in London. And today the topic I'm going to discuss is, as you have seen on the website, the 3 signs and 3 poisons. 3 signs and 3 poisons. 3 signs, sometimes we call this 3 characteristics. 3 characteristics. Some people may be familiar with this in the name of 3 characteristics. Some people use the word 3 signatures or 3 signs. Among the Buddhists, this is a well-known set of teaching. To other people, these 3 signs, maybe they are less familiar with. And even among the Buddhists, when we talk about the 3 signs, when they hear the name, like impermanence, suffering, and non-self, in Pali called tilakkhana, and the 3 signs are impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha, and then non-self, anatta. Usually, people take it as being negative. As being negative, impermanence, they take it very negative, suffering even also. Non-self, really non-self, no self, no me, no you. Again, this is something they take it very negatively. So today, I'd like to present to you that these 3 signs, this set of teaching, as we call 3 signs, 3 characteristics, is very positive. Very positive. And this is what I intend to explain throughout the lecture today. Sometimes the word impermanence is considered only on negative light. Say, for example, when something we hold dear to vanishes, disappears, and people will remember impermanence, the teaching of impermanence. And this is all right. This is the right way of reflecting on the situation. But that's only half of it. That's only half of it. When somebody is not well, and that person recovers, that's also because of the law of impermanence. The sickness is impermanent. We, in this world, we have had many pandemics in the past. And each time Okay, we find something to manage it, to deal with that. And some of the pandemics, they disappear. So that's also the law of impermanence. We need to remember the law of impermanence also when things change from bad to good, and from good to better. Not just from good to bad. I'd like to emphasize this one. Then, in place of impermanence, if we try to see and to use another word, that is change and changeability. Change and changeability. Then maybe change is a little bit more objective and neutral in some people's mind. If that's the case, go for it. Go for the word change. In Pali, it's called Viparidhamma. Impermanent is called anicca. Both are synonyms. Change and changeability. Okay. Even when we are dealing with change and changeability, we all react to change, the prospect of change, the reality of change in different ways, depending on our emotion. If something we like is going to change, then we get upset. Okay, we experience sorrow. But if you get bored, you want the situation to change, because the change might bring something exciting. So not that we understand change objectively, but simply because we get fed up with something. We feel bored with something. That is why we welcome change. This happened in election, this happened in the environment. So sometimes people, okay, they like to go on holiday because they feel stuffy being at home all the time. So they like to see something different, something new. There's nothing wrong to see something new, to learn from something new. But if we are propelled by, if we are pushed by boredom, actually we need to look at that negative emotion of boredom. So there are two sides of it. One is the negative emotion, which is boredom. Boredom is about rejection. It's about rejecting whatever you are doing at the present moment, whatever you are eating, whoever you're with, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, boredom means rejecting all of that. So in that instant, people usually welcome change, not because they have an insight, an understanding into the nature of change, but because they just want to get rid of something. So they would say, welcome change. Other times, not because they get bored, but because they get angry, they get irritated. That is why they want to get rid of something. in that instance, also people would like to have change. Say in the election, if you feel aversion towards something, maybe government, maybe an elected officer, then with that negative emotion, you can't see the good thing in that person, and you want to have a change. But the two reasons for change, the two reasons that many people usually welcome change, that they are not part of an understanding, objective understanding. The two, to recap it, one is boredom. Boredom pushes us to look for something, for a change. And the second thing is aversion or anger, dislike, whatever we want to call that, is emotional rejection. So that also pushes us to look for a change. But what the Buddha is saying, change is not that. And the Buddha is talking about what happens with our mind and body, with our life, and with anything outside, anything we see with our eyes, anything that we hear, anything that we experience. So when we talk about change in this aspect, this can bring fear. Why fear? Because we fear of losing something. For example, if you look at me, okay, I would prefer, okay, a youthful face, not changing. Okay, I would prefer a strong and healthy body, never changing. And when I was young, I used to have a strong voice. And then at Oxford, just before I completed my PhD, I totally lost my voice. And I have regained it now to a certain extent. So I can see change, the process of change is always there. But when we say the process of change, or the changeability, the possibility of change, we are not talking about being resigned to the nature of change and not doing anything about it. No, it's not about passive acceptance of the law of change, but it's about understanding how change happens in day-to-day life, in our body, with our cells, with molecule, with DNA, with all that, changing minute by minute, second by second. To understand that, and then to train our minds so that we live with that change, so that we don't fight with that change. The first thing. The second thing is so that the part of change that we can do something about, so that we do something about, so that change happens, okay, in a positive way. Our emotion changes all the time. Changes all the time. And people's opinions also change. So within that change and changeability, we talk about human effort, that I touched upon when I talk about life of the Buddha yesterday. Human effort. So we believe in human effort. We believe in human effort. We believe in human effort so that we do something so that we do something and changes happen for the better. So the changes happen for the better. So this is all about the middle way or the Noble Eightfold Path that we're going to be talking about in the fourth lecture. It's about recognizing human effort. But human effort wouldn't make sense if we cannot change, if we cannot change things. Human effort wouldn't make sense. Human effort is meaningful only if things are changeable. We can change from ignorance to wisdom, from anger to compassion, from misunderstanding to understanding, from blaming each other for the COVID-19 to understanding and collaboration. So we need this natural law of change and changeability to initiate something. So basically, as a human being, we accept change partially, or we want change. We are keen to have change and changeability. But when we think change means facing something less familiar, an unfamiliar situation, then that triggers fear within us. Change in the workplace, if someone new coming in, joining the team, everybody has anxiety. Even the person who's coming also experiences anxiety until we get to know each other and we settle it down. You can see change is often associated with anxiety. Only for people who want to get rid of something, then for them change may be associated with something hopeful. But as far as the Buddha is concerned, okay, as far as the Buddha is concerned, understanding change in the change and changeability in theory, that's not sufficient. We need to be observing mindfully, with strong mindfulness, how our emotion changes in real time, on the spot. How our physical body changes in real time and on the spot. So this is reflection on what we call impermanence. The things are changing all the time. Okay, now when something changes, and we fear that we're going to lose something, we're going to fight with this change. We won't accept this change. And we we can't see the positive aspect of it, that this change may bring something good, and we have an opportunity to affect this change. So fear, that fear is suffering. The second of the three signs. When we talk about suffering, I'm going to talk about this, explain this a little bit more tomorrow. But the word suffering is not popular with anyone, with Buddhist or non-Buddhist, because if we have to study about suffering, we do so because we want to get rid of it. I mean, living with suffering is not something that we are keen with, that we are keen to do as a human being. This is where the enlightenment of the Buddha comes in, and we may find it very helpful. The Buddha says, if we learn, or if we know how to live with suffering, maybe a lot of suffering won't happen. The involuntary suffering, something that we can't avoid, it will happen. I want to recall, I want to refer to one a famous forest meditation master, still living in Myanmar, in Burma. He writes and he talks sometimes, but he doesn't run retreats and something like that. He lives in solitude most of the time. His name is Mahabodhi Nyingsia. The way he puts it is like this. Involuntary suffering is only a quarter, 1/4. The 3/4 are voluntary, meaning we don't understand, we don't know how to live with that 1/4 involuntary suffering. As a result, we multiply, we top up suffering. We top up suffering. Let me give you an example. Every now and then, okay, every few hours, this body, our body, requires food. We get hungry. This is involuntary suffering. It doesn't matter which religion you choose to follow or not at all. You know? It doesn't matter. This is the nature of the physical body. So every few hours, we have to take care of this body with food and with drink. If we are aware of these basics, okay, this basic requirement of the body, and we will only take food that is agreeable to this body. Sometimes we don't do that. We go after taste. We go after the taste. Even if the food doesn't agree with us, okay. Oftentimes, okay, we go for it. We go for it, especially young people. What happened after that? Okay, we have to go for the food that we crave. And we are blinded to any danger that the food that we are after, is supposed to have. Because we're not looking at the food as a nutriment, something to reduce the suffering of hunger, suffering of malnutrition. Instead, we look at that as an enjoyment, sometimes more than enjoyment. Sometimes we look at that as a social status, a sign of social status. If we look at it as a sign of social status, now our psychology changes completely. So this is how we top up suffering. Suffering exists, but the unavoidable and involuntary suffering is quite manageable according to this Mahatmya theorem. The 3 quarters, but this is not rocket science, okay? This is just to tell you that our subconscious mind, our automatic mind goes into spinning, and what it does, who knows? It increases pain and suffering. The only reason that the mind is doing that is because it doesn't know what suffering is and how to live with that. So if you are hungry, for example, this is my favorite example. If you are hungry, give yourself 1 minute and observe that hunger, observe that suffering. Some people would argue with me, I mean, hunger, you're getting hungry, how could you call that suffering? The word suffering or dukkha simply means something difficult to bear with. Something difficult to bear with, okay? I mean, hunger is something difficult to bear with. When you are hungry, what happens to you? You become restless, you can even faint. It's not something easy to take. I mean, hunger, not easy. For a baby, they would scream straight away with hunger. But to recognize and accept this hunger, it doesn't add you any pain. This is the magic of it. The magic of understanding pain. Of course, I'll be talking a lot more about this tomorrow when I talk about the Four Noble Truths. Today, just to say that suffering is psychological as well as physical or physiological. And the point I like to make is that the majority of the sufferings are down to us not knowing how to manage suffering. So in order to manage it, is so important that we know it. In order to know it is so important that we go through it mindfully. If you get a headache, before you take a paracetamol, in some country, Panadol, okay, before you take that painkiller, if you just experience that headache for 1 minute, for 2 minutes, just breathe in and out nicely and experiencing that headache. And trying to see how subconscious mind is trying to take over, trying to dictate you to do this, to do that, to resist that pain, that suffering. I'm not asking you to spend a whole day with headache, but just maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes. if you accept that pain, okay, it's okay to have this headache. It happens. Okay. You can tell yourself, you can comfort yourself, okay, later I'm going to take paracetamol. Now, for 1 minute, for 2 minutes, because Ven Dhammasami suggests that we live with the headache for 1 or 2 minutes. I'm going to try it. Just try it. Okay. In 2016, I broke my ankle in Singapore. So I had an operation and an implant. So for the first few days, despite the painkiller, you would experience some pain, especially at night. And with slight movement of the feet, you do experience pain, and you wake up in the middle of the night. So every 1 or 2 hours, you just wake up. During daytime, intentionally, I took only 1/3 of the prescribed painkiller because I wanted to observe the pain. I wanted to know how my subconscious habit, my reaction pattern is towards the pain, especially my subconscious habit. In simple terms, I wanted to take the opportunity to train myself to live with pain. So taking less painkiller means, okay, less damage to less burden to my kidney as well. So I did that, and it was a very rewarding experience. In meditation, this is what we do. Whenever there's physical discomfort, at the beginning we refuse to live with that. Okay, we like to get rid of it straight away. But with meditation advice that we get from our teachers, we learn how to observe it. Actually, when we observe the pain, that suffering of physical discomfort is quite bearable. At the beginning, 10 minutes was just too long. But after, too long means not just physical discomfort, not just physical pain, but also psychological pain. We didn't know that those psychological pains were avoidable. We didn't know. But with good meditation advice, we persevere, and we came to know that it's okay to have pain. It's okay. We accept it. We learn how to live with that. What happened? We can meditate for 45 minutes, for 1 hour, some people for 2 hours, 3 hours. And the physical pain doesn't bother them anymore. Of course, physiologically, not much has changed. Of course, today in very advanced scientific era, we can talk about neurological research and meditation. And when we resist, the amygdala, the all part of our brain works, and we spend more of our energy. The blood flow, the oxygen use is at is maximum. But when we accept, when we don't resist the pain, and our brain changes from old brain to new brain, to the frontal cortex, and as a result, the flow of the use of oxygen and and also the blood is less. So physiologically, we are not increasing, we are not topping it up. The pain, the original pain, the pain remains as at its original or manageable level. So accepting pain can only do good to you. But accepting, it doesn't mean we are not doing anything about that. It doesn't mean that we can't do anything about that. Buddhist belief is not about fatalism. It's not about determinism. It's about human effort that I talked about yesterday. So when we accept suffering, this is part of the strategy, if you like, the strategy or the coping mechanism. And it doesn't stop at that. After we have accepted suffering, we observe that closely. And when we observe something closely, understanding can only arise at that time with close investigation and observation. Now, sometimes suffering, like earlier I was talking about, the suffering of hunger, the suffering of physical discomfort. When we are hungry, we don't usually think about other people who are also hungry. No, we don't think about our neighbors who might also be getting hungry. Between 12 and between midday to 2 p.m., this is the time, by habit, through habit, this is the way people in England get hungry. At that time, when we get hungry, we just want to stop working and go and grab some food. There's nothing wrong with that. But one thing that the Buddha advises us to do is that when you get hungry at that time, experience that hunger, maybe for a few minutes, for 1 minute, for 2 minutes, and think about other people who might be hungry. You know, in your office, your teamwork, maybe people outside, or people who have no choice but to work during lunchtime, maybe news people, news readers, and policemen, and whoever. Think about them. If you think about them, then you come to see that suffering is a common feature of human life. Is common humanity, the word that I used yesterday. In that sense, in that aspect, suffering is not me, it's not unique to me. It's me, but it's not unique to me. Okay, you experience hunger, but that hunger is not unique to you. In that sense, we say there is no permanent self, meaning permanent identity. Okay, is a process of experience. Hunger is a process of experience. Physical discomfort is also a process of experience. They happen with conditions. They are conditioned. With this, I'm telling you that I interpret anatta to mean, okay, not just me. Anatta. Anatta means not just me. The temptation to see things as me, as mine, is very strong in us, because we all have to fend off for ourselves. Everyone. It doesn't matter which political system a country adopts. Those days, communism, now open democracy. We all have to stand on our own feet. So this, coming from the situation where we are totally dependent on our mother, and now we have to take care of ourselves. This is a big leap, and it creates excitement as much as anxiety. Young people, 18 years old, going to university, they all feel very excited. But once they reach university, they all cry because they miss home for the first few weeks. At that moment, usually when students come to me, I ask them to talk to their friends who are in the same situation. When they see other people share their experience, the experience of being far from parents, from home, for the first time having to totally depend on themselves. When they see other people share their experience, actually their pain of being away from home is reduced. So anatta means this one. This is the third sign is this one. Is to counter against the tendency to personalize any experience as me and mine. Okay. Because once we have identified that as me, as mine, we are not going to let it go easily. We want to cling to that. Suppose if you cling to some form of disappointment, you don't see that disappointment is quite common to people. At that moment, when you really feel disappointed, it looks as if you are the only one, okay, being disappointed in the world, in the whole world. So that tendency to personalize, to look at things in a very fixed way, and not share that experience with other people. In theory, in practice, That's what we say, that's what we call ignorance or delusion. That delusion is one of the three fires. Okay, the sermon of fire, the fire sermon of the Buddha. This is 2,600 years old. And soon after his enlightenment, the Buddha met 1,000 ascetics who are fire worshippers. They worship fires. They were very good ascetics, very devout, very dedicated, very genuine in their practice. But the way they look at fire was the fire outside, fire that you make and then you worship it. The Buddha reinterpreted fire for them. The Buddha said fire is actually psychological. Fire that is more dangerous to human being is psychological fire. One is delusion. Delusion that my pain, you don't understand, you don't share with this pain, you don't know, you don't have any pain, your life is all perfect. My life is chaotic. We often have this notion. Sometimes when you have to tidy up, a lot to tidy up at home, you feel you are the most, you are the busiest person on earth. Okay, the busiest person on earth. That notion often comes to our mind. If that happens, a tendency within us is triggered. The tendency to personalize, to cling on things, and because we want other people to recognize our workload, busy life. That recognition, often comforts people. But we can get addicted to that recognition for our suffering. So the first is, if we recognize the involuntary, the unavoidable suffering early on, then the insecure feeling, needing other people's attention, needing other people's recognition, to recognize our pain, okay, will be minimal. So the tendency to personalize comes from insecure feeling. Because in the world, we have to share limited resources with many people. Within a nation, or internationally, or within a family, with uncertain future, we feel insecure. When we feel insecure, it's very easy to personalize, to cling to something that we know, and to resist change, and then to subconsciously top up the pain that is unavoidable. The top up is avoidable. The top up itself is avoidable. So it's in dealing with suffering that we talk about the other poisons, starting from anxiety to agitation, to aversion, to anger, and to hatred. These are different degrees of anger or destructive emotion, which is the second fire. The second fire. It creates a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure on the mind, on the body. When we feel insecure because people have not recognized standing in the society, or maybe insecure, we feel insecure whenever we think about uncertainty of life. Or sometimes we just want to be recognized that we do better than other people. So we start accumulating. Greed is the last. Sometimes it's considered to be the first. But here, today, I talk about it as the last poison. We feel secure when we own something. It may be, a false sense of security. But that's what we go for. And usually we do go for things more than we need. And when that becomes habit, what we do is that we fancy something that other people have and we don't. At that time, greed becomes a real poison. We look beyond our need and we get carried away by our want, and we will never be able to fulfill our want. But our need is possible to fulfill. So you can see that the three signs, they are quite interrelated. And the three poisons also interrelated. By seeing one of the signs, you may see the other two. For example, in the first sermon, the Buddha just explained to the 5 ascetics, who ran away from him just before his enlightenment. They were with him, as you remember, for many years, but just before his enlightenment, because he decided to give up the ascetic practices. So they were all disappointed and they left him, as I explained yesterday. But with compassion, and also compassion means, accepting and focusing on suffering, on dukkha all the time, so that your heart becomes shaken with compassion, that you are moved, you are so moved. You're so moved that you just think about what you can do to help other people. So that compassion, with that compassion, the Buddha went to the 5 ascetics and he gave the first sermon. I talk about this tomorrow as well. But one thing that I'd like to point to you related to today's lecture is that in that first sermon, the Buddha only talks about one of the three signs. He only talks about suffering. If we examine the text as it is, as we have it in our hand now, he didn't talk about non-self, he didn't talk about impermanence. But after the monks, after they understood suffering, the insight, the insight that they got was expressed in terms of understanding impermanence, understanding change. They express whatever arises, passes away, whatever comes, goes. So by observing suffering, they understand the law of change, the law of impermanence. And with that, they were able to reduce the effect of the three poisons. And they continue to practice for a few more days, looking at the habit of clinging, looking for something secure. If not now, maybe next life. What would happen to me after I die? So they want to have something to hang on to comfort them, so that they feel secure. So the Buddha finally, work with them on that point. That's the second sermon, and they all became enlightened. I think I stop here. If you have any question, I would be happy to entertain them. Hello, Marlon.
Hi, thank you, Bhante. That was really great. We're just waiting for any questions to come in through the chat. Someone asks, what can we do to help small children who are suffering?
The first thing is to comfort them, to give them reassurance in words or through sympathetic look, and to try to find out, why they are suffering, what they are suffering from, without being judgmental. If we just focus on that pain, and we will see there are things that we can do. Maybe sympathetic learning. Sometimes it's not learning. I like to refer to you one of the books that I have read recently. It's called The Whole Brain Child. Now, how they use latest neurological research and also mindfulness to help children. There's one of the 12 strategies they have in that book is called connect and redirect. Connect means you need to connect with the child, the child's pain, the child's suffering, and then to help the child to really connect with that with that suffering. Otherwise, if the pain, if the suffering is not managed mindfully, it will remain as a trauma. So in order to deal with that trauma, it's important that the child, is able to make sense of that suffering. In that book, the child, in the first chapter, the child in question hasn't learned how to speak. I mean, he's still quite young, and he had an accident. So that the mother who is very informed, well-informed neurologically and also mindfulness, would help her son, to reconnect with the incident, and then to redirect his attention, the child's attention, to something else. So there are a lot of things that we can do to help. The first thing is, of course, to accept suffering, to accept the pain, to accept the problem. First, we who would like to help, we need to connect, to stay connected with the pain and also our emotional reaction, so that we don't get bogged down, by our own emotional reaction. That's one thing. The second thing is, of course, to help the child to connect with the pain, so that we can move on. I also like to refer you to another book. Is the biography of Professor James Doty, from James Doty, D-O-T-Y, from Stanford University, a neurosurgeon. That's about his life, because he came from a troubled background, and he didn't have enough to eat, and his parents were quarreling. His father was alcoholic. His mother was, she had a big health problem. So growing up, he looked at the world as something, as a place, full of injustice, and everyone, he sees that everyone having enough in their life, he sees them as something to feel bitter about. So he grew up with that bitterness. Then at the age of 13, after he practiced meditation, he accepted that it's okay to have suffering, it's okay to have problem. And out of that, from there, from that time onward, he also started recognizing his potential. So you can see, accepting suffering actually calm your mind down and then help you to see your potential. James Doty is, you can Google it. His book is on the internet. It's about the brain, and yeah. The title of the book is called Into the Magic Shop. Into the magic shop. Yeah, that's another question, please.
Thank you, Bhante. I have a question here that asks, is there a Buddhist parallel to the psychological concept of the subconscious?
We don't have the direct translation of subconscious, but we have a lot of explanation that can be considered as explanation of subconscious mind. Subconscious mind. We talk about 3 levels of negative emotion. The first one is manifestation. That the emotion that becomes manifested either through action or through words. That one level. The next level is called active consciousness. This active is different from the manifestation level. It's active in the mind, but it has not manifested outside. The third one is latent or dormant defilement. So when we talk about this, when we talk about meditation or training the mind, we talk about the need, okay, to actually get into the dormant level of the mind, of the consciousness. So that's quite similar to subconscious mind. In that, what we talk about is habits. Habits. So it's about changing habit. It's about a belief in Buddhism that we can change our habit. So we return to change and changeability as something being positive. Okay, I'm not sure if I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. I have a question here which asks, how can we use the teachings on the 3 poisons to combat addiction?
We need to start with mindfulness, using mindfulness to recognize the pain. If we don't see, okay, addiction as pain because that addiction is pain in itself. It dictates us to go for something, maybe internet, maybe alcohol, maybe gossip, maybe drug. You see, any kind of addiction. So that addiction, it can be recognized if we recognize it with mindfulness. Okay, now this urge, this strong urge, is addiction. That mindfulness, okay, is the beginning. With that, to use a very Buddhist term, if we can reflect on that as pain, wow, this is causing me pain. It's just so difficult to resist this urge. So once you have reflected on that as pain, just briefly, then just turn your mind to something else. I like to refer you to 2 books. I don't remember the name of the author of one book. It's called Mindfulness for Addiction. Mindfulness for Addiction. That's one book. It's a very good book. It's written by a psychiatrist in America. You can Google that. It's quite easy. The other book is called The Mind and the Brain, written by Professor Jeffrey Schwartz from UCLA Medical School in America. Published in 2002, he used mindfulness to replace behavior therapy in psychology. You know, when people have obsessive and compulsive disorder, in line with addiction, not exactly the same, but the same direction. He believed that behavior therapy is so cruel. So he wanted to replace that. And he used mindfulness to, in his research. So the mind and the brain, this is about neuroplasticity, published in 2002, 18 years ago. So I think this book is also relevant for addiction, managing addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. I have a question here that asks, how can you accept a situation without losing the ability to change it? For example, how do you accept an illness without losing the desire to fight, to change and recover from it?
You have to stay with your breathing. You have to stay with your breathing. I repeat again 3 times. You have to stay with your breathing. If your mind is calm, okay, the insular part of the brain will work. Okay, in that moment, the executive brain is active. Okay, losing the will to fight, that is the right part of the brain, the emotional part of the brain. So those two sides of the prefrontal cortex, they don't work at the same time. In Buddhist term, if you can stay with your breathing, maybe for 3 minutes, it doesn't matter whatever disease you are suffering from. If you can stay with your breathing for 3 minutes, I mean, your mind will still wander during the 3 minutes. It's okay. Expect that your mind will wander. Okay, but trying to stay with breathing. If you can stay with breathing, even for 1 minute, in that moment, okay, you will not lose hope. The tendency to lose hope, okay, will not overtake you. It will come from time to time. But the executive brain, the insular, the ACC, that is anterior cingulate cortex of the brain, associated with mindfulness, is about calm and confidence. It's about seeing things positive. It's about seeing things positive. When we lose hope, that's because we can't connect with anything positive in our life because of this pain. Because of this pain. I think 4 months ago, 4.5 months ago, I was talking to the carer and the sufferer of cancers, cancer patient in Rangoon. I showed them some video clip from Canada, people who meditate, who use mindfulness to calm down, to stay with breathing. They say they handle the automatic thoughts a lot better. Automatic thought, the subconscious worry, they deal with that a lot better. And in general, 2 more hours of sleep, meaning better sleep. This is 10 minutes meditation, okay, for 2 hours of sleep. I think it's worth investing. But it's better that you keep in touch with other people who suffer from the same thing. Okay, we may have one or two more questions if you have.
Thank you. I have a question here which asks, what if someone is addicted to meditation? Would this be a positive addiction? Thank you.
I like to recall what I have written years ago, maybe in 1998 or 99. I talk about practicing meditation and living meditation. If you say practicing meditation in terms of sitting in silence, it is possible that we lose balance in life, that we ignore other things. The heart of the Buddha's teaching is to engage with suffering within ourselves, suffering in our life, and also suffering in other people's life. Because if we just look at suffering in our life, we tend to personalize it, and we tend to run away. We like to run away from it. Okay, a lot of experienced meditation teachers, when they guide you in meditation, they wouldn't want you to stay for too long in that total calm and concentrated state. They want you to use that concentration as an instrument to focus on suffering, to focus on the our habitual, our habitual reaction to suffering. Because liberation from suffering doesn't come from concentration. It comes from concentration plus understanding plus compassion. So I think living meditation means to listen to people who are in pain, to share with their pain. This can be a form of meditation. So I would call it living meditation. Practicing meditation is to gain some stamina so that we can do the living meditation. I don't answer your question in paraphrasing, okay? I don't say yes and no, but I'm describing the scenario that in meditation practice, there are times that we feel good enough with our concentration, with our calmness, we feel satisfied with that. But an experienced meditation teacher wouldn't want you to stay there.
Thank you, Bhante. Do we have time for one more question?
Okay, sure.
So someone asks, how can I deal with negative criticism? Thank you.
I use one phrase that is attention and attitude. So I like to bring that back to answer your question. Attention is not just attention of our emotional response, but attention of the reality in the world, in the whole world. Okay, I like to recite one phrase in Pali that is in the commentary. It says, "Nati loke anintito." There is no one who has never been criticized in the world. There's no one. Holy people, they get criticized. Leaders, popular people, they get criticized as well. So first is to be mindful of, to pay attention to this fact of life. And the second, to change our attitude. Change our attitude that it's not possible for us to be correct all the time. And it's not possible for other people to be correct all the time. So in this case, I really like the English expression of the benefit of doubt. Give yourself the benefit of doubt, give other people the benefit of doubt. If you do that, I think when somebody criticizes us negatively, we give the benefit, oh, this person may be correct. And we give attention to that. We give attention and we examine if that person turns out not to be correct, okay, to be not factual, then we have to accept that, okay, people can make mistakes. Maybe this is my opportunity to explain. But remember, whenever we explain, if we still get angry and we try to explain at that time, we usually make mistakes. We don't, we solve a certain problem, certain part of the problem, but maybe we plant some seed for further problems. That is why pay attention to our own reaction at that time, also to pay attention to our attitude. Because sometimes when we work hard, we only expect praise and positive comments. We forget the benefit of doubt. We don't have a provision for negative criticism. So if we expect negative criticism, then when it actually comes, it's a lot easier to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you on behalf of everyone. Many people are sending in thank you messages in the chat. So thank you.